Hello and welcome back to the DCU Soccer Podcast, and I'm here with Daniel Wise again. Oh man, what a weird game.
Yeah, boy. We so here's the thing about this game is that if you look at the stat line, DC genuinely dominated possession of the ball in that first half, and then part of that second half. So it was I guess if you look at it on paper, DC played a very good game, but if you were actually watching the game, you saw in that first, I think genuinely that first 20 minutes or so, Miami came in with a gigantic Pringle on their shoulder, and they wanted to, show what they were made of, and so they really came after DC. Really kind of switching up things tactically for them, where we saw them lining up in a sort of deep lying 4-2-3-1 against LAFC. What they pulled against us was a 3-4-3. So a really aggressive type of formation that looked to control the middle of the field, and that's exactly what they did. They kind of lock down that middle. And you saw that with Ben is that, he's typically the kind that sort of, prefers to take it down the middle. But Miami just was not letting them do that. And then sort of forced him off into the wings. And that is where Miami had a lot of success getting back possession and really kind of showing some good stuff. What was your take on kind of the, I guess, overall flow of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed by Miami, honestly, throughout the whole match. They kind of fell apart there, obviously, which we'll get into. But I was really impressed with Miami. They were very physical too. I did see them, knocking our guys off the ball, and Pizarro looked pretty good, I thought. So definitely a team to keep your eye on in our conference too. But yeah, I mean, I like you said, watching that game, it was kind of rough there for the first, to me, maybe, I don't know, 55, 60 minutes. But the first couple minutes they score, and it's like, oh
Yep.
my goodness, like this again. It feels, a lot of it again, like we mentioned last week, like a lot of it felt like 2019, kind of apathetic or something, and it was kind of strange.
You had a defense. I mean, on that first goal, you had Robbie Robinson kind of staring down Birnbaum. And, you've got this rookie going up against a vet. And, Birnbaum was caught in a bad space. I'm not sure what Briant was doing as far as his marking was concerned. Mora, as far as I know, was like completely out of the picture. And so you had kind of this 2-on-1 situation where Lewis Morgan and Robinson and Pizarro were kind of coming just straight down our throat. And so Robinson kind of gave a couple moves, just passed the ball off to Morgan, and Morgan kind of took it up sort of just about to the 6-yard box, and then crossed it clear over to Pizarro, who just had to kind of stick his foot out and dink it into the top of the net. And boy, they looked good in that first series. They just played like a team that, Rodolfo played like the, DP that Miami paid for. And so, they're for sure going to get their money's worth out of him. Pizarro is just, he's a baller, and like really kind of examining his game the first 2 weeks. He's striking me as like one of my favorite players to watch so far this season. Just seeing his football sense and the way he kind of finds the spaces to be, and then again, as I was saying last week, finding just passes picking out into the box. He just looked very, very confident and sure-footed, just sort of either putting some high lobs in there or some really nice crosses. So He's just a very complete player, and yeah, extremely dangerous. So he scores the early goal, and then it was some cagey back and forth from there. What did you see as far as an adjustment that Coach Olson made after that, first goal at the second minute? What did DC sort of do to kind of stabilize? What did you notice out of that?
Well, I think first to go back a little bit, I mean, I think Pizarro not only was extremely dangerous in the attack, I think he also played a really complete game defensively. Like he was all over the pitch,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, like we were talking about last week with Mora, like he was just totally out of position. And I did notice him not going up as much later on, but well, and then eventually, I guess he got hurt as well,
Yeah.
which was sad. But he was quite bad, right? Like that was kind of shocking to me.
He and I want to say Moreno were two players that were specifically kind of deleted by the Miami attack and defense. With the way that Miami really locked down the middle of the field. Particularly in that middle third, right along the center circle. They were just harrying our guys. Really playing a fantastic high press, doing that classic, getting the top guys to mark on a player to who had the ball to basically hustle them up, and then had guys just sort of stationed nearby to cut off those passing lanes. And so Miami was just for those first gosh 25 to 30 minutes we're playing a really complete game, defensively and offensively. As much as it shows that DC United had possession in that first quarter or first half, Miami just seemed to find a way to make DC look like they didn't know what they were doing. But one thing that did happen sort of after that first goal, maybe kind of 10 minutes into the game, was Ben sort of matched them in terms of that 3-4-3, at least when we sort of went on attack. Knaus, I know for sure, was starting to play a lot further up the field. And then Briant Burma and Mora were shifting more into that three-man back
Right.
line.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that was smart on Ben's part, because he, that sort of unlocked Knaus, who I think, from there, really kind of claimed his spot on that right flank. And so I think had some nice link up with Gressel going on. I know he had a really nice cross into the box that I want to say Felipe or Assad had a header on, but just landed right into Robles's mitts. And so, I shout out to Knaus for really kind of taking ownership as far as his role was concerned in the game.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, I definitely noticed that Mora was hanging back. Kind of felt a little bit like they were swapping roles in terms of what they were supposed to do, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of going up or not. But yeah, Mora didn't seem to be fit enough to really make that work. So I think that was smart, maybe in a couple ways.
You have to really wonder. We're sort of we're not doing the full play by play on this game, but what we are sort of noticing is that a couple players, and this really kind of played a factor into this match. I don't know what it is as far as their fitness goes, but they're just not up to a standard that we're kind of expecting out of them, and that goes for Mora and Ola Kamara. And incidentally, both went out in the first half with almost identical hamstring injuries. So, what are you feeling as far as like that goes? And how are you feeling about those players? What's going on with those two?
I think it's even though they had similar injury, which might be a nice, not metaphor, but whatever. Um, the what was interesting, yeah, is like to me, Mora getting that injury was like to me a sign of like, yeah, he is not fit. Something is off with him. Like, I don't know what really is going on, but to me that was like a sign of him maybe pushing a little too hard, along with the signs of like him having two really bad games where he was not doing well or able to get back. But with Ola Kamara, I mean, obviously, yeah, he hasn't scored at all. But I don't feel too awful about his performances quite yet, right? Like, I don't think we've
Yeah.
seen enough good service into him by the players that we've been talking about, right? Like, we've seen some good signs overall, but like we haven't seen enough. Like, we need a lot more service into Ola Kamara if he's going to be 15 to 20 goal striker. So I think that there's improvement that needs to be made there. But I will say it was a super disappointing for hamstring injuries for both of them.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And so, sort of talking about the way DC lined up, they came again with the 4-3-3 that they started last week, and really kind of maintained it from there. They actually did a much better job of staying firm on attack and sort of not going back to old habits that we had last year. But in particular, there was some shifts going on where you had Gressel lining up behind Flores rather than in that central mid position. So, what did you notice as far as like, Gressel and Flores kind of working between each other during this game?
yeah, like the starting 11, graphics showed Gressel in that center attacking midfield role, but yeah, I did notice a lot of the times Flores cutting in on that left foot, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you also see Gressel go on that outside behind him, but I think it's really interesting. I think when the times that Gressel is in that center there, and it's not really working for me though, to be honest. I think while I do see flashes of Flores cutting in and that being really dangerous. I think I would probably keep him more essentially, even though because when he was there and he was for some parts, right? Like I thought he was fine, but Gressel's giving me some worries, honestly.
Yeah, as far as set pieces go, I think he's a pretty solid option. From especially coming from the corner. But yes, as far as it goes on field, maybe it's just trying to adjust to a new system and brand new teammates. He's still a pretty young player in the league, and so you have to kind of give some leeway, especially with Gressel and Flores. They're kind of finding their way. I think the same thing goes for Assad. Those three really are kind of finding their footing as far as like their roles are concerned. Kind of unfortunate what happened with Kamara, but yeah, you've got kind of four guys who are playing crucial attacking roles here, trying to find that footing with each other, and it seems like they're just sort of not the final product yet, not even close. So but let's kind of talk about Kamara and Mora going down. So I think what was it? It was Kamara going down first at around like the 15-minute mark, and our brand new Estonian striker came in. Eric Sorga got probably more minutes than he bargained for in this game. And then with Mora, you had O'Neill Fisher come in for him. And I think pretty much everyone, or anyone who kind of knows about his background and just his tragic run of injuries, he came in and He looked hungry. I think I think all things considered, unfortunate that Mora and Kamara went down with injuries. Uh, Fisher and Sorga came in and kind of brought some energy. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was definitely excited to see Fisher, and I thought he did really well
Hmm.
overall in that game. I thought he did really, really, really well. Sorga, obviously he's new and he's a young guy. Like, he's 20, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
Um, and his first MLS game, there was a lot of like stuff where you could tell he was new to the league, kind of like the physicality and some of it where I think he was kind of surprised by some of the things that people were doing to him. But yeah,
Hmm.
I thought he did fine. I mean, he did no worse than Kamara did, right? So, uh, which I don't know if
I
that's a good thing or bad thing.
I thought in particular, he at least made his presence known to a degree where, like, he had to be somewhat taken seriously on the field. So, like, you kind of talk about that physicality. I think, some guys wanted to make sure that, he's coming in and we're not going to let him uh, show what he can do, because of all the, goals he scored in Estonia, whatever that means. I think a lot of MLS guys, uh, you know, I don't think they necessarily want to see him open that up or see if that can actually happen. So yeah, you definitely had him getting roughed up in there, but I think he brought a particular energy on attack, and so first half was really kind of like the sparring match between these two. Outside of that goal from Pizarro, you had kind of a very back and forth type of affair. So then, let's move on to the second half where the real action kind of
Yeah,
started.
it gets crazy, I guess, right?
Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, to tell about sort of what led to the first goal that DC United scored.
So the first one was the red card one, or no, was that the second one?
That was the first one.
Oh, okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
so there was a ball played over. I believe was it Gressel who was right there, something like that.
it was
And
Gressel. Yep.
yeah, it was Gressel, and they were running for it. It was Roman Torres and Gressel, and the ball kind of popped up, and it seemed like Torres just kind of took a whack at it, kind of, but not too much of one, whatever. And it was an interesting sequence because that also caused something else not to happen. Um,
Right.
which was a goal on the other side, um,
Yes.
but that was called back, and yeah, there was a red card for Roman Torres at the end of the day.
And I even though I've written an article about VAR, it's still a quagmire to understand because so the time or the time span between Roman Torres basically palming the football uh, for a good, like, probably quarter of a second, half a second, something like that, and then the goal happening. There was no call or anything like that. So, like, the fans were going nuts about it because it was clear as day. But
Yeah.
the goal happens, and then they go to VAR to examine this thing that happened probably 20 seconds, 30 seconds earlier. And I'm sitting here like, that is insane. Like, how is it possible that they went that long before making a VAR call? But apparently it's one of those things where, like, they have to find a stoppage in play to conduct a VAR review. So kind of a really confusing series of events, which brought on this set piece. So it was a red card sending off Torres, but it was outside. It was. This is another interesting thing. Was like it was a scoring chance for Gressel, but because of kind of like the severity at which Torres stopped his run or his attacking chance, he was awarded the red. And so there's a set piece, and I think it might have been just a little bit after that, but one of the Miami defenders ended up fouling was
Oh,
it
right.
Assad in the
Right.
box.
Right. And then he took
And
that penalty.
and so, or no, Flores got fouled, and then Assad took the penalty,
Right.
scoring the first goal for DC. And then just 2 minutes after that, then this was sort of the really wild thing. So Flores takes a set piece, and then
Then yeah, Brilliant takes it and volleys it.
yeah, so kind of a gosh, it was a great set piece by Flores, and then it was one of those things where it was a really low curler where it just went slightly over the box or over the wall of defenders, and then just really curved real aggressively into that lower corner, and so Robles gets it. I think he gets his hand on it, but then the
Yeah, I
ball
think so.
just dinks off that, gets off the post, and sort of like ends up in this high volley that Frederick Briant was able to get one of the most magical strikes that a center back could ever have on a chance like that. He looked like a true striker out there. What do you think? Like that's not an easy shot. A high volley like that to
From that
basically
angle,
boot
yeah.
that in so perfectly.
Yeah, and it's
Top
like
net.
yeah, it's kind of like at a strange angle too. So like it wasn't straight on or anything. It was kind of to the side, and a lot of players would just like sky that or miss hit it or something, and it was just perfectly hit right there. And yeah, that was crazy. I thought the most interesting thing about that. I mean, I guess that would be the most interesting thing, but another interesting thing was how like you mentioned, how good of a set piece that was, and yeah, like curled straight down into that
Mm-hmm.
corner, and it was like, wow, that was that was pretty good, and so hopefully we could see more of that as well.
That's quality right there. That's what you get when you get a Peruvian national team player, like a very solid. And I mean, I will say, in South America, you see those types of free kicks all the time that just curl, so aggressively. Like, I think even Robles was real surprised about, kind of the angle that took. So, really, yeah, fascinating sort of series of events that led to DC taking the lead. So that was I'm not sure what minute that was. I think it was I want to say it was around the 60, 65, somewhere around there, kind of in the 60s, if that jogs your memory all right.
Yeah, something around there.
And then DC just didn't do a whole lot after that. What did you notice as far as like that last like half hour of the game went for DC?
Well, definitely a little more defensive, and they also brought on a defensive substitution. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of saw them sit back and as the game was going on, get more and more defensive, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it makes sense, right? Especially how the game kind of went, and how strange it was, and how kind of lucky they were to be on top to begin with. Um, but I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there might have also been that fear of what happened to the Rapids game of that last minute goal. So, you
Right.
know, there was that. It was very nervy and very physical game all together. But yeah, I mean, the only thing that was not a great game, I don't think, but for DC. But they won, and that counts for a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, credit to them, but boy, we're seeing some things. And so, I guess, how are you feeling with the squad we have now? I mean, particularly suffering, with injuries to Kamara, to Mora. Assad seems to be doing okay, but he was also nursing something. How are you feeling about this team's fitness going into a Cincinnati game that we should win, but I don't know if I even feel confident about it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the big takeaway from our last two games is that we have a hard time scoring goals, and we haven't done it in open play. So it's kind of hard to win too much if you can't do that. You can be a set piece team, but that doesn't feel great, and it's kind of like you kind of have to be a little bit lucky there. But yeah, I mean, Cincinnati, the worst team probably in the league. You know, not great. So yeah, we really should come out with a win there. But like you mentioned, those two injuries are pretty hard. I think I don't want anyone to get injured, so that sucks. But Mora being out might be a little bit of a chance to get someone else in there and turn out a little bit better because Mora's not been doing too well. But yeah, for Kamara, I feel like that's probably a huge blow, even if it's him having to take some time to get in the swing of things again, and then being able to light it up a bit. This will take time off of that as well. So if it's hamstring stuff like they said, it's probably not going to be uh, a short time. So yeah, it doesn't feel great.
Right. Now, the saving grace that Cincinnati had against Atlanta was what's his name? Yuya Kubo was able to kind of net a consolation goal for them. As far as like the rest of the team goes, uh, you want to think that like DC can handle them. It's a team that's facing a lot of turmoil. They let go of their coach just like 3 weeks ago or something like that. Their presumably star striker was allegedly caught up in a insurance fraud racket, and so you've just got like a lot of instability happening with this team. So as far as like DC lining up, they're coming up, at least as far as they're showing a pretty, standard 4-2-3-1 formation with Cincy. And so, not facing anything too outlandish like what Miami had shown us. Not I don't think going up against the weapons that the new and improved Rapids have. Again, with them going 2-0, a very solid start of the season for them. Do you think we get a win out of this? Do you think anything less than that is going to be like a severe disappointment?
Uh, well, those are two different questions. Yeah, I mean it's going to be a disappointment. This is the worst team in the league, and so it's kind of hard to argue that we shouldn't be beating this team handedly, I'd say. I haven't predicted us to win any of the games so far, so I don't know this one. It's rough, like you said, those guys being out, but I don't know. I kind of feel us scraping out a tie here, to be honest.
What makes you feel that way? Because I'm
Well,
actually feeling a little more confident than that. But maybe this is working to our advantage. I think every time you feel pessimistic and I feel a little more confident, maybe that means DC comes through with a win.
right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they just played Atlanta, and Atlanta beat them 2-1. And that was, and I watched some of the game. FC Cincinnati did have some not incredibly compelling subs, but they do have some guys on the bench that can make a difference, even if it's just a little. But I don't know. I don't feel quite very good about how DC's playing, and I think we were extremely lucky to come out of that Miami game with a win. And so traveling to Cincinnati, a lot of people show up to those games. So, I'm just not quite sure. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, do you think? How do you feel about sort of like with our front players? I'm not sure. Did you hear anything as far as Kamara is concerned with the length of his injury? Have they released anything about that?
No, I haven't seen anything, but you got to imagine him and Mora won't be there if it's hamstring at all, right? Like those are typically, even if it's like ready or whatever, you still try to give it time because those are so like pesky. But yeah, I mean, he hasn't been really that effective so far, so it's hard to really say that having him there would help too terribly much at this point.
Now, so say you get to create next week's lineup. Where do you go with this?
Yeah, let's assume Kamara and Mora are both out.
Hmm.
I think I keep Knaus in one of the two fullback positions along with Fisher. Keep the center backs the same. I think I'm kind of tempted to change up the defensive midfield a bit, but keeping Moreno and Felipe there. Maybe pushing Felipe up a lot more because you kind of expect to keep Cincinnati on the back foot a little bit. So you might also want to potentially try out like a 4-1-4-1 type situation,
Mm.
staggering maybe Felipe and I would consider Flores in the central role there, and then Assad and Gressel, and then I guess you'd have to do Sorga because he's the only striker on the roster at this point. So
But how about this? Would this be too uh, kind of FIFA meme worthy if, say, what if Fisher and Adoyatsum start at the two fullbacks? You move Knaus up to that right mid, and then say Gressel goes on the wing, Flores to the number 9, and then Assad over on the left. What do you think about that? Let me just tease your mind a little bit with that kind of setup. Now, obviously, at that point, then we have no defensive subs whatsoever. But how do you feel about that type of formation right there?
uh, I'm a little iffy on that. I don't know if Flores would really do too well up there, to be honest. But I mean, honestly, it might be worth a shot. It's
He's
not the craziest thing I've ever heard, but I do really like Knaus at that right back role though, and or full back role, whichever side.
Yeah.
Because at this point we have to kind of decide which side he would be on, considering
Mm-hmm.
Mora being out. But yeah, I mean, I like him there. So it's hard for me to see that because of that.
Yeah. So you would put Sorga in at striker. You'd start him next week. I mean, if
Yeah.
there's any team to sort of start a guy like that against, you'd think it would be Cincinnati. Kind of a pretty woeful defensive performance from them against Atlanta. Possibly something that you know give him 90, see where he's at, because clearly, I mean, he's been playing 90s over in Estonia. So, but again, what does that mean? How does that even remotely compare to MLS or even USL over here? But clearly he's put in the minutes, he's scored. But why not give him a chance to show what he can do?
Yeah, I mean, I that's kind of what I think too, right? Like, or that's how I'm thinking about it. It's like, well, you have one striker, and if
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna have to redo your formation and potentially plan more people out of position, it's like, well, like this is what everyone was talking about in the preseason when we were asking maybe we should sign a striker, right? So like I'm gonna have the confidence that they have confidence in Sorga to start in that way as a starter in MLS, and if not, I'd rather see that be proven out, like proven out that he's not right. Like you kind of it's a rock and a hard place, but like I don't know. I feel like you kind of have to almost.
Yeah. And that's another interesting thing is, you know, gosh, you have to wonder where this team is at financially, where they haven't. There's no indication of moves. They have a couple trialists, but I'm not sure where they've gone as far as those guys have been concerned. It's a puzzling situation with this team. You know it's this club that sort of I guess portrays themselves as a big time competitor, but when you look at the roster, it looks like they're operating on a shoestring budget, or not, not shoestring, but like, they've kind of front loaded on, like Flores and Gressel, but like, have they left any financial room for anyone else?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, like the Areola injury doesn't help,
Yeah.
right? But having three of your starters out in week three is, I don't know. It seems doesn't seem like a total predictable thing, but yeah, just having one or two more decent decent guys would be extremely helpful. And so that you gotta wonder like what's going on there, and maybe something comes out, but at this point it doesn't look very good. And to your point about like yeah, like our image is tied in with our history and that kind of stuff about being this top five MLS franchise club, all that kind of stuff. But when you're losing to the Rapids and you're worried about going to Cincinnati, it's like which part of MLS are you actually grouped with at a competitive level? It's kind of not great.
Yeah. I mean, they did bring in Mohamed Abu at midfield. So there's that. And I guess, that's something that could be tested out, sort of what I was talking about earlier, where, maybe it's you bring Gressel up, you shift Flores in. But yeah, gosh, you look at that bench behind Kamara or even behind Sorga, you've got Griffin Yao, who is all of 17 years old. And the fact that he's, showing up on the bench for an MLS team is it's nerve wracking. You know what I'm saying? Like
A
you know,
teenager, yeah.
yeah, it's so weird. And then Emmanuel Boateng, we haven't really seen a whole lot from him. So it's just, yeah, you don't know how to feel about this team. You kind of hope for the best, but you're not exactly putting your expectations all that high.
Yeah, no, totally. Definitely expectations are not terribly high, and it seems like also like who's gonna get hurt this week, right? Like,
Right.
and especially going into a game against Cincinnati, like I hope that we don't have to use our defensive midfield
Yeah.
depth too much, right? Like I would think the opposite. Like maybe you start out with I don't know. Like I said, I could see trying to go out there in a 4-1-4-1, really pushing that boundary there with a team that doesn't typically possess the ball very well, is not very good, uh, so it's
It's it.
it's
This
rough.
should be a confidence game. This should be. And bear
Right,
in
right.
mind, for our listeners, I'm kind of being the positive one in this conversation,
Yeah, for
Eh,
sure.
which illustrates like exactly like how we feel about this. Like getting those 3 points out of the Miami game is yeah, much appreciated, much necessary. Makes us feel a lot better this week than we were feeling last. I mean, if you remember me really going in on this team after that Colorado game, I feel better having gotten these 3 points, but at the same time, I'm sitting here like, like I know Knaus, he's really doing his role very well. Briand and Birnbaum are great. There's nobody behind them if one of them goes down. Mora has gone down, so now we have O'Neal Fisher getting in. And so, and then when we talk about our midfield and our attacking three, four of those guys of the six are still trying to get used to each other, are still trying to figure out how they kind of fit with each other. So it's the alarm bells are in the distance ringing, and before you know it, it's going to be like Silent Hill territory where it's just going to be black and ugly and horrible. You know what I'm saying? Like I am so nervous about this team that especially when they hit that stretch in the summer and the air is going to get thick and soupy, the muscles are going to get tired, especially if we're still on this, sort of real Spartan roster depth. It's going to get real ugly if things don't change here.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's the real concern, right? Like, this is our third week. I mean, if we continue to have injury problems, like pretty much at all in any position, like what what are we even doing? It's gonna get to the point where, I mean, if God forbid Flores goes down, we're playing with no DPs
Yep.
against, Atlanta and whoever else, that
NYCFC and New
yeah,
York Red Bulls. Yeah, you take a look at that, and boy, this season gets real ugly real quick. And suddenly we're in that Cincinnati territory.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like the only reason why I'm feeling, I guess, so pessimistic is like, to me, like the Miami game is how we won our games in 2019. Like, lucky kind of set piece,
Mm-hmm.
barely, like, and I've said it countless times, but like I want to see signs of them doing something. I mean, I've seen some signs of them building out a little differently, and their shapes have been a little different. But like you haven't seen, the combination play in the final third or that final pass really at all. I mean, you've seen some glimpses of it against Colorado. God, I mean, in the Miami game, like I don't know, I didn't really see anything that was too convincing. I don't, if we don't get a set piece during a game, can we score? Like I'm not seeing it, and I think it goes into last season since this was the last time we were able to do that, and that's
Yeah.
my concern. It's like when you watch other teams play, they can do this, and when you watch teams with Gressel last year, he was able to get it to the right place, and like so what's up, right? Like
Right.
that's my concern is I don't see signs of what I thought I would see, quote unquote thought I'd see, I guess.
Right. And gosh, you see it in the stat lines. Especially when we played against Colorado, and then or this week against Miami. 15 shots for Miami, 8 shots for DC. For Miami, 5 of those shots were on target. For us, it was 3. So is it a quality over quantity thing? Yeah, maybe, but I would prefer a little more action. Getting shots on goal instead of what we seem to tend to do is kind of try to walk it in. Uh, and that type of approach just doesn't seem to work. I want to see these players kind of take their chances from distance, and especially against Miami, that could have helped us a lot. Is taking more shots on goal. I think we were trying to be, we were playing that, type of build up from the back type of offense. But once we got into the attacking third, it was just kind of, we were working the perimeter a little bit, but then we weren't necessarily finding proper shots on goal. So that was, it was just kind of frustrating to watch in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very predictable in that final third. I mean, you don't see any, and maybe there was, but I wasn't paying close enough attention. But like, you don't see any of these kind of dynamic interchanges between positions. You don't really see too many, space creating actions too much. Like, you'll see with a lot of other teams and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff. It's like we need to do
Yeah.
the work off the ball too. That to make the space and really open up the opportunities. Um, but on another note, I was. Have you listened to the latest Pitch Pass podcast?
No.
You should listen to it. It was an interview with Birnbaum, which he said something extremely interesting, which I guess maybe raised my alarm bells even more
Oh,
about
geez.
the culture in I guess the locker room and probably beyond the locker room. But he was talking about one of the games last year, and Rooney was there, and they had won the game, but he was just absolutely like pissed, and he was like, we played like trash, all this stuff, and Birnbaum's like, that's the first time I've ever seen anyone do that. I'm like, so wait, if you win, everyone's just always, positive about stuff, like your whole time at DC, like that's, I guess at this point it's not terribly surprising, but like to me that's a huge red flag. It's like, you know, wins are great, but like the coach knows like what's sustainable and what's not. And a lot of our problems were we were winning unsustainably, and that's just a huge concerning factor to me about now this game. Is like, has that culture returned? Are we happy with this? Like,
Mm.
I don't know.
Here's the thing. Oh boy. It's a lot of what the Red Bulls had to deal with when they had Thierry Henry on their roster. He was infamous in sort of how he vocalized how he felt about the form of his teammates, and he was not shy about publicly letting people know exactly how he felt about that. Not just like in the press, but you could also see it on the field. If there was a bad cross or a bad pass, or someone didn't quite link up properly with a pass he was doing, he would just absolutely show it every single time. So maybe there's just something to that where like coming from like the European system where it's just all you see everywhere is quality. It was probably one of those things where like he kind of let it out. Not to say that like, oh, our players don't know what quality football looks like, but I think to a degree, like maybe particularly over here in America, it's a sort of everyone kind of builds each other up, a lot more than maybe they do over in Europe. I think,
Right.
it's a place where like criticism comes pretty freely. I remember, sort of tangentially going off this, but like, being an English major, I get A's all the time over here in the States. And then when I studied in England for a summer, I poured a lot of work into a paper only to get like I think like a B on it. And I go to the, professor, I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, it was okay, but it was a B quality paper. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I did so much work on this. I write super well. I get A's all the time. And he's like, well, it's a different thing over here. You're going to have to realize that. And so, just so that's kind of the thing is I think with Rooney, it's sort of one of those things you have to take it with a grain of salt. He was probably feeding some criticism into there, but yeah, maybe that gives some insight into like, maybe the locker room is a bit more supportive with each other than maybe Rooney was to them. You don't know because he was sort of checking out at certain points last
Well,
season.
that's true
So
too. Yeah.
you don't really know with that sort of thing. But no, that's a interesting insight right there. And I kind of, yeah, that's fascinating. It would be interesting to spend a week with the team kind of like behind closed doors and seeing what that whole atmosphere is like in training, pre and post game, like just getting all into that and kind of seeing the players at their rawest and realest, I suppose. That would be an interesting insight into that.
Yeah, totally. I guess the comment itself you could make it fit a lot of narratives, I guess. But yeah, I guess I was mostly curious if like, if the coaching staff is overly positive just because they won, or like if that's the culture. I guess there's also that angle of too, like Rooney definitely did not seem to hide his feelings on that stuff too. So the
Yeah.
truth likely lies somewhere in between. But if you're a real big Olsen critic, you could definitely say, rightly or wrongly, on this point, that maybe the locker room is a little too non-critical, and maybe that's why we see some of this stuff. But who knows?
And it's the same, I always have to preface, love Olsen to death. I really do. Just interacting with him, he's a clearly a smart soccer guy. I don't think anyone can rightfully say like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing or anything like that. But like, gosh, it seems so routine sometimes, especially after games. It's sort of like, win or lose. It's like, oh, we're building on, or we have things we can build on, or things I see that you know, but then we have times where you and I are constantly saying, oh, this is 2019 all over again. Where is this building? Where is this cohesiveness going to come from?
Right, right. Yeah, no, I mean, definitely a club legend. There's a lot of talk about him as a coach and everything. It's likely not going to change, if at all, till the end of the season anyway. But it definitely does. Yeah, like you said, like routine beyond just like the press stuff. It's like I said, some of the stuff is kind of predictable at this point, which might be why we when we do make the playoffs, we go in that first round.
Yeah.
You could kind of predict what's going to happen, especially by some of these coaches who are pretty good, and some of the staffs have you know really gotten up there in terms of some of the data they can use and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
You gotta hand it to Diego Alonso, the Miami coach. Delivered a heck of a game this week. It's tough to prepare for a team that literally is on its second game. You can only go as far as like what they've shown, what they showed against LAFC. But the way he kind of switched it up, where he went from kind of like that conservative, 4-2-3-1 formation to that super aggressive 3-4-3, opened some doors tactically for that team, and it showed this is a guy who's really trying to find winning ways for this team. So I'm really impressed with what he put on the field. Especially, I was thinking he was going to have Pellegrini come in, and it was going to be that Pizarro Robinson Pellegrini connection, but Lewis Morgan coming in at that right forward, and then shifting Pizarro over to the left was just a really interesting move. And so just kind of gave a look that DC wasn't quite prepared to handle. So yeah, credit to him. He put out a heck of a team.
yeah, I definitely don't think that they were totally prepared as you may expect. Like you said, like second game. But yeah, anyway, should we do predictions for Cincinnati?
All right, so predictions for Cincinnati. I feel good about this game. I think we go 3-0 DC United.
Oh my goodness. All right, fair
I
enough.
think I think Flores nets 2, and I want to give Gressel the third.
All right, that's pretty good. I guess if that were to happen, I think that would be awesome. I think we're gonna do a 1-1 tie. I think it'll be kind of a chippy game, or maybe just kind of sloppy, or I don't know. Like I just keep thinking about that last game we played against them at Audi Field
Yeah.
last game. It was just kind of like a blah game, and two red cards, I think, right? That was that was
Yeah, that
something.
was ugly. Yeah.
So
Nine
maybe
men.
some bad blood there. I don't know.
No, I totally see. And, half the guys that Olsen is fielding remember that game. So they're gonna want to get after them. That was a result that shouldn't have happened last season. So I think, it'll be sloppy to a degree, because that attacking prowess needs to sort of come to form. But I can still see them putting up numbers. It won't be pretty, but I think we come out with a really solid win.
Yeah, and it'd be great to see, some of that, in the final third really coming together with some combination play, some interchanges, something, But yeah, I think that's all I've got. Do you have anything else?
As far as like the game time stuff, I think we've pretty much exhausted that. But yeah, what do you have this week in terms of shout outs and stuff like that?
I need to look that up. Hold on. Why don't you
All right, all
lead
right.
us off?
Yeah, so starting off, I guess I'm kind of doing two, but like they're sort of intertwined with each other. Is Perfect Soccer, which is run by former DC United guy Quincy Amarikwa. Uh, he does such a fantastic job on social media. Unfortunate what he's going through right now, not quite finding a team that wants him, which is a shame because I think he's a quality player on a lot of fronts, as far as like a locker room presence, as a solid backup, or even a solid number nine starter. I think the guy, if he's given some chances, he can definitely prove himself to be a valuable asset of a team. So he does just superb job on social media, always interacting with fans and other players. And, he's really becoming kind of like a mentor of the league. He's what is he? I think he's an 11-year vet, something like that, 9 to 11 years. He's been in there a while. So like, he's been doing it all. And he actually just had CJ Sapong on his show. CJ, who plays for the Chicago Fire. He had a really great conversation together, basically talking about their early years in the league and how they sort of adjusted as from being newcomers to becoming full-time guys. In particular with CJ's sort of experience with Sporting KC, he would kind of he went from a number three to being thrust in the starting position, and so he really kind of grabbed his opportunity and really became an impact player over the years. And so, like, Perfect Soccer is just a wonderful tool. I think it's more geared for people who are, young players, either in high school or college. But it's a great tool for, people who are just interested in the sport on like a mental level, for anyone who is looking to get into coaching or anything like that. Because he has like a mindset of a coach. Quincy is just, yeah, he's a wonderful guy. So look up Quincy Amarikwa on Twitter and Instagram, and then look up Perfect Soccer, which is, yeah, like I said, just a wonderful resource. I think our dear friend Sarah Colossi is involved with that. And so, yeah, just a fantastic operation he has going on. And then a quick shout out, to two guys, David Shams and James over at DC United Kingdom. David just gave birth to a baby girl, so congratulations, buddy. And then I believe James's wife is going into labor. I don't know if she's given birth quite yet or anything like that, but congratulations to you two. Wishing you guys the best.
Yeah, no, totally. Great shout outs. Yeah, congrats on the new fathers, for sure. And yeah, the Perfect Soccer, they also do these live shows with Quincy. So those are always really cool. If you happen to be around, I think there's also recordings of them, but those are really fun too. And the chats are always funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is my quick shout out is actually this app that doesn't work, I don't think, in America, but
Okay.
but the
Get your VPNs.
right. Well, so the Twitter page is actually really interesting. The Twitter is Infogol app. So that's INFOGOLAPP. And it's not perfect, but I have noticed that they publish a lot of like the expected goals, and they have these like cool, not a chart, but I guess a graphic of a lot of games, and they've actually posted some of the MLS games, and so you can kind of see them like even at halftime they'll do it sometimes. But yeah, I follow it, and stuff will pop up. I was watching the LAFC Philadelphia Union game, which was absolutely crazy. If you haven't seen the
Yep.
game of that, and after that ended, they posted the expected goals, which were kind of interesting. Obviously, that 45-yard shot was not a full
Yeah.
expected goal, but that was super interesting. So yeah, I thought I'd give them a shout out. I kind of find the statistical stuff really, really interesting about the game, and I guess pretty much anything statistical. So yeah, I mean, I thought that's a good shout out for people who are interested in that.
It's not quite MLS, but did they predict Manchester United beating City 2-0?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Or maybe they did. I haven't looked, but yeah, there's all kinds of stuff here. Like they have the Premier League, they have Bundesliga, and they'll do MLS too.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the graphics the most. And apparently, I guess they might be from the app. So if you're overseas, maybe it'll work. But when I tried to install it, I don't think it was available. So yeah.
Gotcha.
But the Twitter page is a fun follow.
Okay, and what's that called again?
Yeah, it's at INFOGOLAPP, Info Goal App.
Okay. Well, yeah. I guess that's pretty much it. I guess to close it out, I've been Daniel Wise from Soccer Made Simple. Just relaunched my newsletter this weekend, so I was really happy to get that rolling again, and then recorded the second episode of my podcast. So, want to thank you personally for getting me back on that wagon.
Well, yeah, and also tell the listeners where you can find your podcasts or what you can search maybe in the in the podcast app.
If you don't mind me being shameless, I'm at DCUSoccer on Twitter and Instagram. And then you can find my newsletter at tinyletter.com/soccer made simple. And then you can check out my podcast on anchor.fm/Daniel-Wise. And yeah, I'm on. So if you search for Soccer Made Simple on Spotify and Google Podcasts, I'm going to show up there. I think I'm on Pocket Cast now. Still waiting to get on Apple Podcasts. That's been held up for some reason. So that should be coming pretty soon, though. The areas that you can find my podcast, they're rolling in. So I'll keep you informed as far as where you can find it as that comes. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for being on again, and we'll be back hopefully next week after we beat Cincinnati, I guess. So yeah, and I guess I should also say, you can find the podcast on iTunes, and if you really like the podcast, feel free to leave a review. That really helps us spread the podcast and get new listeners. So that'd be really awesome. Giving us a 5-star review. Maybe if people do that, maybe we'll read them on the show.
Hey, yeah.
And Daniel can clip this, and then we can post this clip as well.
Holding you to that.
Yeah, but yeah, and then obviously I'm on Twitter at DCU_soccer. I feel like we had a good show. Cool.
You bet.
Peace.
Take it easy.